And we're live. What's up, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls? Thank you for coming over to the DFS 5-pack. It is the 1st of February already. Groundhog Day is coming up real quick for those of you looking forward to your favorite holiday. We are here to talk a little NBA DFS. I can't believe we're already through a month of 2021, but it is where we are. And you know what? I was just thinking about you, sir. You want to know why? Because every day we're a little closer to baseball season, which I'm sure you can't wait for.
No, I cannot wait for that. Listen, I'm up on all that. The Indians, after dealing Francisco Lindor, made a little nice signing Eddie Rosario. So at least I got a little pick me up there. I'm thinking about baseball all the time. Until then, though, I am really digging in this NBA season. It's been a lot of fun. I'm excited to keep it going. There have been some downfalls of COVID. Obviously, schedules have been messed up, but it's also made me just really appreciate every slate that much more.
Yeah, if you got an opportunity, guys, to watch the Wizards-Nets game last night, it was a blast. It was one of the better regular season games I can remember. Great game, great ending, just a lot of fun as we continue to march through the NBA season. It has been a good time, and it's just been nice to have it around, and hopefully we keep things rolling over here, guys. Today, the show is brought to you by our good friends at the website Drafters, where they do daily live snake drafts all day long. And if you ever get bored with the monotony of building, FanDuel and DraftKings lineups, the snake draft is quick. It's fun. It's exciting. You can play against your friends. You can play against random people. You can play for all sorts of different amounts. I'm willing to challenge people on $5 head-to-head battles. Bring it on. Let's have some fun, guys. Beat me. I'll announce your name on the show the next day. You can see our names on Drafters right up here. Cositron for me. M. Bellman 9. It's M. Bellman 967. The 9 on my keyboard isn't working very well, and it did not work when I was typing this one out. If you want to sign up through us, we appreciate it. Promo code DFS 5-pack. I got a link to our Drafters Facebook group below. Join there. I'm constantly drafting on here all day long. Come challenge me. Let's do it. Let's play $5 heads up against one another. If you beat me, I will just announce the winners on the show the next day just to have a little bit of fun with it because it is a good time.
I'm excited. Something we haven't really talked about too much, especially recently. Not every slate on DraftKings or FanDuel, wherever you play, is the same. Some slates are better than others, depending on how you personally feel. This one tonight, I'm not really loving it on DK. So I'm really thinking about potentially doing a bigger drafters draft and just having most of my skin in the game that way.
I understand that one, guys. It is Mondays, so it is what we call Monthly Monday over here at the 5-pack. Buy a monthly membership today. I will send you half of your first month back right away. Go to the website link below. Thumbs up is appreciated. Day passes are available. Subscribe to the network if you are new to it. Let's talk about some of our plays for the day. So I'm going to get started with my boy Giannis right here as my cash game lock of the day. Don't overly worry about that questionable tag up top. He is listed as probable. Coming off 2 losses like the Milwaukee Bucks are, a couple of games where they really let things get away from them early on, let their opponents just rain three-pointers on them left and right, and then fought back only to come up a little bit small. I love the Bucks at home tonight. What is the one potential caveat to why Giannis doesn't smash here? It's something that you don't normally get concerned about, but you are concerned about right here, which is the Bucks play too well. And the Portland Trail Blazers just don't have the firepower down a bunch of their good players to stick with them. That is a real concern. In that scenario, I still expect Giannis to get over 50 points, but ultimately he wouldn't reach his ceiling because he'd be chilling on the bench in the fourth quarter while guys like DJ Augustine and Brent Forbes are out on the court. So that is something to think about. But fortunately for Giannis's floor, this is a true island game for the Bucks, which means they didn't play yesterday, they don't play tomorrow. So you have to be less concerned about their minutes. The flip side of that is the Portland Trail Blazers do play tomorrow. So you don't necessarily need to run it back with Dame if you like Giannis. It's just something to consider when you're building your rosters tonight. Other things to like about Giannis, despite the fact that he absolutely balls coming off losses, Portland has 0 rim protection. With Joseph Nurkic not around, they have no way to protect guys from the rim. Enes Kanter is a fun DFS roster, but he is a terrible rim protector. One of the guys in the league that defends Giannis best on a one-on-one basis is Portland Trailblazer Derrick Jones Jr. Well, he's not playing tonight. So the kryptonite that they would have Giannis Antetokounmpo is not in the lineup this evening. You got a pissed-off MVP right now. He got posterized by Cody Zeller on Saturday night. All the reasons for him to come out and be forceful, direct, and ball tonight. My only hesitation with him would come from the fact he could ball too hard too early.
Well, I think that that's what's important and why we're talking about cash games here, because that risk is minimized. You're not trying to get to the top of the mountain. The difference between Giannis getting 70 and close to 60 isn't as big of a deal in cash games. Obviously, you still want as many points as you can get, but unlikely that that's going to be the difference between you cashing and not, as long as Giannis said walks into value when he's on the court, which he will, because Giannis walks into DFS points faster than anyone. Brooklyn's got no way. Portland has no way to stop him. I do think that you see a fired up Milwaukee team tonight, back-to-back losses against a Portland team that has played competitive, but very, very shorthanded. Not a great spot for them, especially playing tomorrow. I do think that this game has big time blowout concerns, and that's why I'm not Giannis into my tournament lineups. However, he's still wildly in play. What you mentioned with the floor, and if I were just making one lineup today with my projected top scorers on the slate, Giannis would obviously be in there. It's the only thing is if this game gets out of hand. If this doesn't get out of hand, it's hard to see him not crushing in this spot.
If Portland makes some threes today and keeps this thing close, I will give a virtual darn near guarantee that he will 6x on this price tag, which means 66 points. If this game is competitive and Giannis is out there till the last minute, he will give you at least 66 points. I said it today. Quote me now, hear me later, or hear me now, quote me, whatever the saying might be on this one. I feel really, really strongly about him today. As strongly as I've felt about him probably all season long.
Well, because it's definitely a case when we talk about these games, if they're close, it's hard to see both, it's hard to see Portland keeping up with Milwaukee. This is not that spot. If this game is close, it's because Portland is making threes. Milwaukee will be able to score offensively. My problem is that I think they play too well defensively.
Yeah, it's just do Simons and Hood and Gary Trent, do their secondary pieces hit their threes today is a lot of what this comes down to.
No doubt.
All right, next up, let's move over to Lonzo Ball. We brought up his brother on Saturday. Now we're going to move back over to Lonzo. I know he was a guy you liked a lot the other day. This is just a real solid top-to-bottom game for DFS potential. That doesn't mean it'll work, but if you look at it on paper today, before this thing starts, it looks like a good game for DFS. And there's a couple of guys, including Lonzo, who, they could easily be $500 to $1,000 more.
Yeah, that's all it is, right? It's not like Lonzo himself is some absolute smash play that you have to lock in here. But on a 10-game slate, this slate doesn't have like a ton of guys that you need to lock in, at least not yet. So in a game that you mentioned, I think has a lot of upside, especially for the prices of guys in this game. Lonzo fits that to a T. We've seen him play well lately. I think that potentially the trade rumors have kind of sparked him a little. He's playing big minutes. We know that Lonzo is a guy that when he's playing well, he's got big upside at this price. He's always had a little bit of a chip on his shoulder going against De'Aaron Fox. I love it when these two match up. I like Lonzo a lot here. Wanted to bring him up to talk about this game as a whole. I think there are a ton of plays from this game, and at 5,500, Lonzo stands out. But again, I don't think Lonzo is the type of guy. We've had a bunch of guys recently that have just been auto locks. Lonzo is not that guy for me. He's just a guy I like on a New Orleans team that I think is wildly in play tonight.
Well, if you like the rivalry stuff with De'Aaron Fox, Fox had his best DFS game as a pro, I think, last time when these guys met up. I believe he had 77.5 DFS points in this game, which, for De'Aaron Fox, that's an amazing game. He's not a 77, well, nobody's a 77-point player, but he went off. So that could be a good up situation for Lonzo. It's also going to piggyback into our next guy, which is another reason to like them. So one of my favorite NBA tweets I've seen all year is LaMelo is just Lonzo with confidence. Well, after the last couple of games, you could see Lonzo entering this game with confidence, which is the biggest concern for him. One, the shot's not consistent, but he doesn't need to shoot threes to get DFS upside. It's just a feather in the cap when he actually does do it, like when he torched my Milwaukee Bucks the other night when he was out there looking like Klay Thompson. So you got to like today that he's probably feeling more confident than normal, because that's the biggest impediment to his game.
No doubt about it. I do think that, ultimately LaMelo is just better than Lonzo. He's more consistent. He does everything better. But that doesn't mean that Lonzo can't be good in his own right.
All right, so speaking of which, when I was talking about that, another guy from this game that he's going to get some love today. You're not going to sneak up on anybody with Tyrese Haliburton, but it's a kid we like a lot. He's just a stud in the making. For me, this is He's been the most impressive rookie for my money so far, at least based on where he was drafted and everything like that. I've been really, really impressed with him. I like this kid a lot.
Over
A little bit more consistent in my eyes.
Okay.
I think LaMelo might have higher upside, but like if I had to go out and win a game tomorrow, I would want Tyrese Haliburton on my squad.
I get that. I mean, he does everything. He fills the stat sheet, and he's more reliable. I also agree, though. At the end of the day, if we're looking for a point guard in my future and want an ultimate upside, it would be LaMelo.
Yeah, the upside of LaMelo is better, but I would have Haliburton just an eyelash ahead of him for who's most impressed me right now. And if I had to win a game today, it would be Tyrese Haliburton, my favorite of the rookies. But the ultimate upside of ball is higher, no doubt about it. So I like this kid a lot. He's as NBA ready as anybody of the young players that have come out this season. He's awesome. He hit a minor rookie wall for a couple games about a week or two ago where he didn't play that well. His minutes were down a little bit, but he's been back to balling. I think he's got 3 out of the last 4. He's played really, really well. But this also moves over to the De'Aaron Fox point. Last time out, Fox had, I think, his best upside game as a DFS professional. You can call him an NBA professional, but for us, it's a DFS professional, which means that I expect the Pelicans to remember that and to come out and play De'Aaron Fox as fiercely and as competitively as they are capable of doing tonight. Despite the fact that the New Orleans Pelicans they're not a great defensive team, they do actually have 2 very good individual backcourt defenders in Lonzo Ball and Eric Bledsoe, and I expect them to try to give De'Aaron Fox the business today. All this does is make Haliburton in a spot where maybe his life is just a smidge easier. So it's not the ultimate reason that I'm playing him. I'm playing him because he's good, he's affordable, and a game I like with shooting guard eligibility, which is monstrous today. But if you're looking for that one extra little thing, I don't think that hurts his case.
Agreed. You're also seeing him close games, which is just massive. He's still priced very affordably at 5,200. We like him a lot here. And again, talked about it with Lonzo. I like this game. If I were stacking a game, it would probably be this one, although that's not necessarily the way to go on a 10-game slate or however big this slate is. It's just a ton to like about Haliburton here. It's still very affordable in a good spot. Looks NBA ready. Just a guy that we like a lot here for all those.
I think ultimately when you ask me about LaMelo, when I watch the Hornets, sometimes LaMelo looks like a rookie. At no point of watching the Kings, if you had told me that this kid was a rookie, would I have believed you? I'm like, no, there's no way. This guy's been in the league at least a couple of years. He looks like a veteran.
I agree with that. The thing I will say about LaMelo also makes plays, and I watch him out there, and I'm like, wow, I've very rarely seen anyone ever do this.
He's got a real, LaMelo's definitely got a gift as far as his court vision, right? Like he just makes plays that you're like, dude, you got a little bit of young LeBron in you in that sense.
And you talked about confidence, like he's oozing with confidence, maybe to a fault in some, in a way, but a lot of times it helps him. I mean, he thinks he's the best player on the court, and the confidence is dripping off him.
The fine line between cocky and confident is a tough one for not just NBA players, just for most of us men in general. I know, and I realize that, so there's a couple of you ladies listening. It's more of an issue, I think, with men because, you try to be confident without being cocky. And, LaMelo's definitely confident with a little bit of cockiness. And I like the swagger, but, it's a fine line for all of us to walk.
Definitely. It's always that fine line, and I think there's no difference for these guys in the NBA.
I try to come on here and be confident with my picks without being cocky. Some days I probably bring it over the top a little bit.
Well, it's always like, growing up, trying to get girls, etc. Girls always want someone that's confident, but not someone who's overly cocky. It's that fine line.
Especially the older they get, and they like the cocky side a lot less.
That's so true.
Being that I'm an old man, that's kind of what I run with these days. So, all right.
The only thing I was going to say about this, because I love the Horford play, and then I'll let you break down. Do you think he's a long shot?
I think he's a long shot based on ownership. I don't think he's necessarily a long shot for production because he is one of the better players on the Oklahoma City Thunder. So we've discussed this all season long. Since we started including the long shot plays in our show, long shot can mean a variety of different things. And like when we get into your play as well, I don't think he's a long shot to produce, right, but I think he's a long shot as far as the number of buyers he's going to get. So currently at 11:43 Central Standard Time, Al Horford is projected for single-digit ownership. There's a couple of other centers, including a guy who I've been pounding into every one of my lineups for the last week that's going to get significantly more love than he is. Al Horford, I had struggle rostering for a while. We talked about him on the very first NBA slate of the year, or at least the first slate that Oklahoma City was on, and then I watched every minute of that game, and he looked passive as hell. Well, over the last few games, Al Horford he's played a lot differently. And I will start my Al Horford play with talking about the downside, which is he's not going to shoot 75% plus from three-point range forever. He's been absolutely on fire from three-point range. Now, the flip side of that counterpoint is going to be the fact that his three-point shots are wide open. When Shai breaks down the defense and gets into the lane, you kick it out to Al Horford, where the center has now moved down into the post, and he is wide open for these three-point shots. Christian Wood, while being a DFS darling, is not a great individual defender. It's something he's working on, but he's still not a very good defensive player. So that could be good for Al Horford. I will virtually guarantee Al Horford will have at least 3 or 4 wide open three-point attempts. Do they go in today? Hey, who am I to say? I don't know that for sure, but he's going to get the wide open attempts at the very, very least. He has been extremely more aggressive over his last 6. This is now double-digit shot attempts in 6 straight. We know he's a solid rebounder. He's an excellent assist man for a big man. He's very capable of block shots and steals. And this is a game that in Oklahoma City, Houston's the better team, but I'll give the Thunder credit to keep this one competitive. So we could see a full 4 quarters of Al Horford out there. For some reason, there's a bunch of other players in Oklahoma City getting more love today than I think they should, when I think Al Horford is my favorite play off the Oklahoma City Thunder today.
Yeah, I agree with that. He's also crushed value a bunch recently, which we're not game log chasing, but we already like him. He's playing well. He's affordable, good spot, a little bit under the radar. I used Horford last time out. Was surprised at how low owned he was. I think the fact that he's only center eligible is really killing his ownership, and I get that. People are also still kind of afraid to play him. I like him a lot. I mentioned this on our members only video, and he really fits. He is a true cog in the machine in all formats. Again, I mentioned it's crushed value. There's a chance if he has another good game tonight, we could see him closer to 7K on the next slate he's on. I like him a ton here.
Well, this is where like your emotions and like watching basketball can both be good and bad. Because I watched like almost every minute of that first OKC game because I was all in on Shai for all of my year-long leagues, and I really just wanted to get a better feel of the Thunder. Like he looked like he didn't even want to play. Like maybe this was just his veteran presence trying to fit in. I know for me, like somebody who's done sales for most of his career, I'm a little bit of a slow starter those first week or two. I just want to make sure like I feel acclimated to my things before my cockiness and confidence comes oozing up. Maybe that's who Al Horford is. New to the team, got a bunch of brand new teammates. But that stuck with me for way too long to the point that I was very hesitant to play Al Horford until having watched the last 2 games.
Yeah, I'm with you, man. That's always part of DFS, fantasy, life in general. Sometimes we can, and I definitely have a tendency to overthink.
Cut out there for a second.
I just said I definitely have a tendency to overthink things and look too much into things. And you're right, it's hard. It's hard to separate and know when. Like you mentioned it, you saw him the first game, he was awful. Well, we know who Al Horford is. We've got years and years of seeing him be better than that. And I do think that for some reason, people just are off of him in general. I'm not sure why. I can't put my finger on it.
Well, I think it goes back to last year. He was terrible for Philly
True.
because he didn't fit there. So you think, oh, maybe he's done. Well, no, maybe he was just in a situation that didn't fit. Because guys can have certain things. Do you remember when Nnamdi Asomugha went from the Raiders to the Philadelphia Eagles, and they went from playing him in man-to-man coverage where he was really good to asking him to be a zone cornerback? He just didn't fit. He still could have played, man-to-man defense very well, but he did not fit in his own scheme.
I do remember that all too well. He was probably the best corner in the league on the Raiders.
Yeah. He was right there. Him and Revis were like, there was a conversation. And then he went to Philly, and he was below average.
It was a legit conversation for a couple years, so like Asomugha and Revis. And then when he went to Philly, he was butt.
Yeah, I think Marcus Peters, when he played for the Rams not that long ago, everybody's like, this guy is awful. He's a bust. And then he goes and plays for the Ravens, and that system works for him.
Literally thinking that exact same thing.
That's one of my favorite parts about DFS evaluation is breaking down the different ways that these teams play. And some guys don't fit everywhere. Like Klay Thompson at his peak will fit on any team because everybody needs a catch and shoot type of player. But not every player is going to fit on every single team. It's like the difference, trying to think of a better example off the top of my mind, but like there's just different roles guys can play. When you went to the big 3 in Miami Heat with Bosh, Wade, and LeBron, they had so much talent, but those 3 never really fit together.
For sure. No doubt about it. I mean, when I think about that, I think about Jeremy Grant a lot, like what he's doing this year. Also a guy like Kevin Love, who we saw have monster numbers, and he was in the guy on his own. And then when he wasn't the guy, obviously wasn't nearly as good. So you're right. A lot of times the spot means more than people give it credit for.
Yeah, and if that's what like Bill Belichick has always done well in the NFL. Like he knows his personnel, he knows what they can do well. He lets them do that instead of like a Mike McCarthy who's like, this is the one thing I think I know how to do, and if you guys can't do it, I won't make adjustments.
Yeah, I think that that's what we've seen in professional sports nowadays. The coaches really have to be willing to adjust to their personnel, not the other way around.
Yeah, if Drew Brees was your quarterback, you were going out to try to win a football game today, you wouldn't ask him to throw the ball 40 yards down the field.
Exactly.
All right, so a little off topic here. Let's move over to the last play of the day. Your long shot of the day is a guy by the name of Monte Morris. As far as the Nuggets go, for anybody who didn't watch the game yesterday, they had the hottest shooting three-point half I think I've ever seen in my entire life. Gary Harris left that game, and there's a good chance he doesn't play today against the bad team in Detroit. Good opportunity that they won't use him, which opens up a couple of extra guard minutes right here. Also, what I like about Monte Morris, and this wasn't even something we discussed, like the Joker had to shoulder a huge load the last couple of games. I think this is a great game to let the second unit run a little bit against an inferior opponent.
Agreed. A lot to like here. Under 4K. If Gary Harris is out, I like him more. But either way, I like Morris here. Morris is a guy I've talked about a bunch this year. He gets good run on a daily basis. I imagine he's going to get good run today with Denver on the tail end of a back-to-back. This game has big time blowout concerns, which will only help Morris here. He's a guy I think is going to walk into solid value regardless of how this game plays out. But he's got a chance for big time upside if this game does get lopsided, which is very likely. Again, Nuggets coming off a big win against the Jazz. Not hard to see them mopping the floor with Detroit here. Under 4K, he's got a really good history against the Pistons. I've been on Morris a bunch this year on a slate without a ton of guys I'm in love with. I love this value at 3,800.
So I think it's also important that we just take a second and talk about the different kind of builds you get, because people aren't going to be paying down at point guard today. So Morris is not like a high upside type of player, like where he's going to go out there and get you 40, 45 points or anything like that. However, he's very capable of mid-20s or even upper 20s in a situation like this. But it's going to be a different build, which is where he kind of becomes a long shot. You see how quickly ownership can shift. And there's probably going to be some cheap plays that come out today. But I think Tony Bradley yesterday, he was terrible, right? Awful DFS score. And if you just built with different cheap guys, you could have gotten a monster bump. If I had stuck with Aaron Baines, who was in the cash game write-up over Tony Bradley, that's a 20-point difference in DFS. Sometimes not using the cheap chalk can be a huge benefit, because just because it's in play doesn't mean it always works.
Yeah, listen, and that's one of the hardest parts about NBA DFS, right? Is that what you just said, is knowing when or when not to use the really cheap chalk. Last night, it was the fade of Bradley was key. But I can't even remember, who did we talk about earlier on this slate that who was the center? Jackson Hayes.
Jackson Hayes.
He's a lock for me if Adams is out. However, I'm going back to our members only video. However, I don't think it's absolutely crazy if Adams is out for someone to think, I want to fade Jackson Hayes for another cheap guy based on what you just said.
Yeah, just for it to be a little bit different, no doubt about it. And then there are some things that will be out of your control. So, I played Tony Bradley yesterday. I thought for cash games specifically, he was the play. I skipped him in GPPs and went with Dwight Howard. But my thought process on that one, as I kind of like Tony Bradley because I think he's a decent DFS player. But that game, Philly got down 15, 20 points. And it almost looked like it was one of those games that it could flip in the way where the Pacers roll, and then they needed their outside shooters to come in and get more aggressive from the perimeter, and Bradley had no place on the floor in that team. But if that game had worked out differently, Bradley might have played 25 minutes.
Yeah, definitely. I thought my concerns for Bradley were, one, he was going to be crazy high owned, and thought there were other cheaper guys to go with. And then two, I liked him starting because that showed confidence, but it's also a much tougher path with him when he's playing with Tobias Harris and Ben Simmons, et cetera, and on the court with Miles Turner and Sabonis. Again, he didn't end up playing well last night. You play that game out 100 times. I bet 70 times he's at least cash game viable in that spot. So that's one of the most difficult parts of NBA DFS.
Right. If Philly plays better early and they get a 10-point lead, I think Bradley might double the number of minutes he played. We don't know that, but I just think it's a very viable idea.
We literally saw the same thing with Howard and Bradley the last time Embiid was out. Like literally the exact same thing.
Yeah. So they're still trying to figure it out. I don't know. It's always an interesting conversation, but it's like, that's the difference between cash games and GPPs too. There's the risk that you're trying to weigh into certain situations like that. Like for me, I liked Bradley enough that I was absolutely going to lock him into cash games.
Of course.
Because I knew that if the game worked out differently, he might go for 30 easily at high ownership. And if you don't have him, you are screwed.
Yeah, that's like, again, I'll say, I think that's one of the biggest question marks in NBA DFS is when to get on those guys, when to get off them. And like each situation is different. It's the best way to put it.
Yeah. All right, guys, we've meandered through this one a little bit, talked a lot today. But that's all right because that's what we're here to do. Thank you all for watching. Give me the challenge on Drafters, guys. That's the name up there. We saw it, Kazatron. It's the same as like the email and everything like that. Send me a competition if you guys want to play. If you beat me in a heads up one, I will, we'll announce your name on the show tomorrow. Just have a little bit of fun. We'll continue to push Drafters and talk about them. And best of luck to everybody today.
Thanks a lot, guys.